So welcome everybody to the next podcast of Resistance Studio. This week we have somebody else. This is not Connor, this is Christina. So Christina we've been working together since 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Right. Do the math.
Yeah. And we've worked in Ireland, the UK, and America. So here we are in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And we've worked with thousands of people, with companies, with individuals, with athletes, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm delighted that you're jumping on with the podcast, because what I'd love to talk about this week is, because we've talked a lot, we've gone in detail in a lot of the podcasts on eccentric training, on protein, and really in-depth. But here, I really want to kind of bring it all together. And obviously, you've got incredible experience working with so many clients over the years of what it really takes to get results and how you put these components together. So when you're talking about exercise, rather than just isolated, well, how does the nutrition support the exercise, or the exercise support the nutrition, and what are all the components?
Yeah, it's like a formula, isn't it, to get the result?
Exactly.
One thing alone doesn't really cut it.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe even just starting off there, I mean, what are the main components that you would see that is needed to succeed, if you could kind of break it up into a few categories?
I've always seen the first thing is the person has to make that mental decision, which luckily usually when they come to us, they've decided they're ready to change. And then getting those goals in place and really motivating the person psychologically on what their motivating factors are. And then obviously the exercise and nutrition, then with that coming together. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I use the word triad, like there's these three aspects, almost like a triangle, where at the top, you got to have very clear goals and exactly where you are, where you want to go. And a big part of that is having the right feedback mechanism. So even in terms of that and what we have at the studio here, and what I'd love to do for anybody listening or watching is that obviously we'll talk about what we do here at the studio, but then also how people can apply the same kind of structure and mechanism at home to get similar results, because we did manage to do that during
you can do it anywhere
during the lockdowns and all that. So so in terms of monitoring, what are the what's the data that you look at with people coming in? Like, what are the most important things that you think?
Always the waist and the body fat are big ones for us, and then obviously people are very interested in weight loss. But for me, I would think waist and body fat are much bigger factors, and that's going to show if they're losing fat or muscle. And if they're losing that muscle tissue, well, then they're going to be slowing their metabolism. So we're looking for the reverse. We're looking to increase the muscle tissue, recondition it. So they'd be my number ones.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely paramount, because I think it's probably, if you could say that, especially when it comes to weight loss in particular, I think that's probably the biggest mistake that people make.
Yeah, for sure.
So how would you do that then? How would you know what their body fat percentage is? How would you measure that? And what would you look for when it comes to that?
Well, right now we have our awesome 3D body scanner. So that's taken our workout of measuring with an old school measuring tape. And we used to use the calipers, check the body fat. And now, the shape scale does that for us, doesn't it? It's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's the most advanced and accurate one on the market. I've tried them all, of course. I've tried every single one out there. And this is, I think it's 0.1 of a millimeter, something crazy anyway, super accurate.
Wow.
And what I love about it is it does, not only does it do, because that's one thing, and I didn't even know till I got it, and it's so much better, where normally you just do a measurement, say like around your arm or your waist, but this does volume areas, because in general what you want is your overall waist area. Obviously most people like that to go down in general, whereas if it's just one measurement, if you take it an inch higher or lower, it could go up or down, or how the weight sits could change.
Yeah, there's human error there, isn't there? That's just inevitable.
Yeah. And even in, and I know because you mentioned this quite a bit, like when you're doing the measurements for the hips, because when you train the muscle, it can change, it can lift things. So if you even if you're very accurate, you're doing the hip measurement in the same place, they could be gaining or losing like muscle or like size in that area, but it may actually show the opposite in one measurement, because if everything is lifted and you're taking the measurement the same way, it could drop when it's actually increased or vice versa. I mean, I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I know that's something
super accurate, which I love. It's just, there's no debate. Did you really lose 10% body fat?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, that's been a great addition. Now, for those that are, want to get something similar at home, because I know with our remote clients, the Zozo Fit, I think is pretty good.
Yeah, it's a great alternative.
Yeah, and that's pretty neat. It's kind of like pajamas that you put on. So you put in your age and weight, etc., and they send you out like basically like pajamas. You put on, and it has all these dots on it, and you use your phone, and then it works out your body fat percentage. It can show you the differences and stuff like that, which
it's pretty
is pretty cool,
isn't it? It's only like $100, is it? Pretty cheap.
I think it's $200 for the actual, for the whole kit now. So we'll put a link in there for anyone interested, because that's for remote clients. We use that, and then anybody that comes here, they can use the 3D body scanner, which is awesome. Yeah. So so definitely getting a good measure in terms of people's measurements, their body fat percentage, because then if you lose 5 or 10 pounds, you know how much of it is fat and how much of it is muscle. Basically, that's such a key component, because some people can think they're doing great with weight loss because they'll drop weight rapidly if they're on some extreme starvation type diet, so they could lose 10 pounds in a couple of weeks even. But if they're losing muscle tissue, not such a good idea.
Yeah, which is most people, isn't it, with weight loss or say Ozempic or any of those kind of extreme weight losses. The issue is people are losing that vital muscle that we're losing as we age. That's accelerating the aging process. It's just not a good idea. So yeah, exactly, because that's something that I think people, again, if they're listening to this for the first time, we have discussed it in detail in other podcasts, but for sure, when you realize that the loss of muscle tissue is essentially, that's what most of aging is. So aging is the loss of muscle tissue. So like, some people might think, well, I don't care, I just want to lose weight, so what if some of it's muscle? But why should somebody care that they lose muscle tissue? Well, your organs are muscle. That would be my number one.
Okay, I want to hold on to your organs, yeah.
But then muscle burns fat. It's going to decrease your metabolism if you lose that vital muscle. So making sure you're at least holding on to your muscle, but ideally reconditioning and probably gaining muscle in most people's cases, right?
Yeah,
I think,
Yeah, for sure. And that is like, again, what most people miss is because if you think of it almost like that's your metabolism, that's your energy, it's muscle that burns fat. So if we were going to drop too much muscle tissue, while you may lose weight in the short run, your energy drops, your rate of burning fat drops. Very hard to maintain that weight loss, and that's why, I mean, what percentage of people regain weight after a year? It's a lot, isn't it?
You hear different numbers, but yeah, they say like 90% of people, I think, was the number, wasn't it?
Yeah, 95%. So that's a huge amount. So if you want to succeed long term, you've got to focus on just burning the fat, maintaining the muscle. So that definitely is crucial.
I feel like if people just understood that properly, we wouldn't have such an epidemic of obesity, essentially, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so we're looking at monitoring everything, getting your measurements, your body fat percentage. Anything else that you'd like to kind of see or monitor as people are going through in terms of charting people's progress?
Well, we have the metabolism test. That's going to be great feedback to see, are you increasing your metabolism, because that is going to be where the magic happens, because if your metabolism goes up when you're not exercising, essentially you're still going to be burning more calories and staying in shape very easily. So we have that device, is pretty cool. And then the strength assessment is going to be a good way as well. So the Vitruvian machine will do a full strength assessment, but also we have a grip strength, which is going to be great feedback too, and it's linked to longevity, isn't it, with all the studies?
100%, yeah. Like grip strength is huge, and I just saw something recently, and we don't do this specific one, but we do it through the Vitruvian. It's even better. But push-ups. There was this interesting research that came up showing that people that could do, say, more than 40 compared to less than 10 push-ups, it predicted longevity and health better than things like LDL cholesterol, which I thought was really, really cool. So that's so strength is huge. Yeah, so that's why. Because strength also, one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, while the amount of muscle is important, but the other part of muscle is the quality of muscle.
Yeah.
Because there's times where I've been lighter and I've had less muscle, but I've been stronger, which is interesting. So that relates to the quality of the muscle tissue as well, which is interesting. So I do think while we use muscle as a really good marker, and it is a very good one, strength is probably even more important.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that as we age, I mean, from the age of 50, you lose 1% of your muscle mass every year, but 3% of your strength.
Wow. So
that's a lot more, and even up to 8%.
That's huge when you add that up over a few decades.
Yeah. So that's something, and we talked a little bit about that before, but when you lose muscle as you age, it's not just this gradual linear, you're 50 now, so you're going to have less muscle than 40. It's more to do with these catabolic events where you might be sick for a couple of weeks, you got a flu or a cold, you could drop quite a bit of muscle in a very short amount of time, and then you never really regain that. And it's this accumulation of catabolic events. One huge one being weight loss.
Yeah.
I know we talked about that again on another podcast, but that head doctor researcher said that if somebody loses weight and regains it, which most people do, the catabolic effect of that, the loss of muscle tissue, is the equivalent of 10 years.
Wow.
So you lose weight, and each time you cycle that, you're getting 10 years older. That's horrible.
No,
we definitely don't want that.
In terms of metabolism.
Yeah. So metabolism and strength and the body fat. So that's an awesome overview of that. And I think, if you're at home, the Zozo Fit costume is brilliant, or something like that that's going to measure that for you. I mean, the gold standard is the DEXA scan. And sure, if you've got access and go to that, but it costs money and it's cumbersome and you got to check it. It's basically like an X-ray of the whole body, and it gives you the real detailed analysis. So it's great from that perspective. But I do think these 3D body scanners are a really good alternative for most people.
I'm thinking with people at home, just a measuring tape around the waist would give you a good idea if you're losing fat or muscle. Every inch off the waist should be 4 pounds of fat. So if the scale stays the same, but you lost 2 inches off your waist, well, you probably gained some muscle, lost some fat.
That's a brilliant point, and that's even easier for people. That's a really good way, and that's again something over close to 20 years that we've been doing this for, where we notice that correlation of an inch being about 4 pounds of fat.
Seems pretty accurate, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's always worked out about that.
Yeah, it surprised me.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we're going to have very clear exactly where a person's at. We can chart the progress. You put in your goals, etc. So then moving on from that then on to the next component, which is exercise. So for people that know nothing, if you said, okay, I got to do some exercise, what kind of exercise would you recommend?
I'll always put resistance training first because it's what most people lack. They know how to get out and go for a walk or a run or whatever kind of cardio they might like, but most people aren't sure how to weight train, and as we age we're losing that kind of muscle related to strength. So to actually get in and resist weight for everybody, I'd say it's crucial over even cardio in a sense, because most people are going to, day to day walk around and be a little bit active, but to actually get some strength training in, I think will make the biggest difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that's the type of muscle that we lose as we age, I mean, is there different types of muscle, or how would you explain that? Like,
well, yeah, as we age, we lose more the muscle related to strength versus the type we use for cardio. And so you always say this, and it's so true. I've noticed it since you said it. Old people can really walk for a long period. They can go out for long, long walks. They don't seem to lose that muscle connected to that type of training, to cardio training, versus they very much find it difficult to lift their shopping bags or even just walk up the stairs, and basic things like getting up and down out of a seat become harder for older people. So to counteract that, strength training, squats in particular, for the getting up and down.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And we cover that, I think, in the definitive guide to exercise in more detail, that we actually have two very distinct different energy systems and different types of muscle, one for endurance and stamina and the other for strength and speed and power. And like you're saying, most people, just by moving throughout the day and hopefully getting their steps in, and cardio is very easy and a personal thing. Some people love to go for a hike, some people love swimming, some people love cycling, some people
dancing,
like using the
all
treadmill.
sorts. Yeah.
So you can kind of do things that you like or enjoy, just stay active. But the crucial part that most people are missing, and that's really the decline in people's health, and is this obviously the strength training, what you're saying. So that's a really good point. So you get in that resistance training, and that's going to be vital. So with the resistance training, then, is this going to be hours every day? How long would
Absolutely
you need to
not. I personally like less than an hour a week. I think.
Less than an hour a week.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of people would say, whoa, less than an hour a week. Can you really get results with less than an hour a week?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we're always going to laugh and smile, because when we put people through workouts here, after 15 minutes, they do not want to do anymore.
Yeah, I love to say, I'll train you as long as you like on that first one. They can't handle more than 20 minutes, can they?
Yeah. Well, we focus on that intensity where you're really maximizing. So, you'll feel like you've done an hour in 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah. So,
and
so
this new mode even less, I think, right? It's like
this new mode. So that's something interesting. We haven't talked about that. It's something
Drop
where
that in.
we've got to be careful, because we could go off on a tangent on this one, but this is obviously something we're
keeping
so
secret.
Excited about. Well, we could talk a little bit about it. It's literally so hot off the press. We've only had it a week, just over a week, and already there was the feedback from the clients. Yeah. Oh my God, they are loving it. Absolutely loving it. So do you want to talk a little bit about the new mode?
You can start.
I'll start on that one.
You're the expert.
Well, it is. I mean, this is something where I've kind of had this in my head for years.
Yeah.
And a lot of it came out of a conversation last year with Vitruvian, and they were kind of explaining the motor and what it could do, and it has this incredible mode. I just call it magic mode, because it's just magic. You don't you don't need a weight.
It is magic mode.
Yeah. So essentially, there's no set weight. You can literally lift it up, and whether it doesn't matter whether you're doing a squat or a bicep curl, doesn't matter what exercise you're doing, you can make it go, like, you just go slow and then it's super easy, or you go really fast and then more weight is applied, and you can literally maximize and go all out in a rep. And it's so incredible, because then it just becomes that weight. So it really has to be experienced, because I can explain the technology, but it's magic.
Yeah,
it's just
definitely
magic.
The future. I don't see anything kind of surpassing it or being better for now. I think
it could maybe incrementally, just tiny little things within the formula, but fundamentally, this is a big revolution. Because it requires no weight, and you can't pick the wrong weight. Yeah. So we designed the class around saying, okay, we're going to go easy, stay in the green zone, then we're going to go a little bit more. We're going to the orange zone or yellow zone for medium intensity, and then we'll go all out for whatever it is, 20, 30 seconds. We might do another set of that, because always when you're doing weight training, one of the biggest parts that's really hard to get right is to apply just the right resistance at the right time with the right person.
And that's always been our biggest kind of thing, training people, is picking that perfect weight for them.
Yeah.
And now it's like they have that autonomy. So as hard as you want to push, which I feel like people do want to push all out when they have that ability, no one's really holding back.
Exactly, yeah. Because, and look, there's so much research on this, but getting close to failure is going to get the most results for most people. There's all this kind of, should you have 1 rep in reserve or 3 reps in reserve, but no one's saying you should finish with 100 reps in reserve. So in other words, you should be close to fatigue.
Yeah.
And with this mode, it's brilliant because you're in control. Like you said, you got that autonomy. It's also a lot more effective because normally when you do any movement, we forget how stupid weights are because we're just used to them, and we operate around the basis that we're just using gravity and weights, and they have so many limitations. So whenever you do a movement, so say if you do a squat, well, at the bottom of the squat, I mean, what would you say a strong person could do at the very, very bottom, like the hardest
maybe
point?
Like
they did a full
70,
squat.
70
pounds, 80 pounds. And then what if they're doing a partial up at the very top?
500.
Yeah, so that's a ratio of over 5 to 1. So if you're using a normal weight and you're going to do a full squat and go all the way down, well, then you're going to have to pick that 70 pounds. So even at the top where you could do 500, well, you're going to have to stick with 70. So it's obviously not optimizing
it's like
for that part of the motion.
A full squat at the top, but it's easy.
Yeah,
typically.
Exactly. So it's like a rest.
It's like the rest, yeah.
Once you get more than halfway, you're kind of resting for the rest of the rep. Now with this mode, you're pushing as hard as you can throughout the whole range of motion. So if you can push harder, well, then more weight is applied. So going back to that example, so say you're doing that full squat at the bottom, say you're doing 70, but then when you get up towards the top, you can be pushing 400 pounds on this machine. Which is incredible. Yeah. So that's remarkable. So rather than only optimizing for maybe a couple of inches throughout that whole range of motion, now you're optimizing for every inch of every motion.
And you feel it. It's like you suddenly get to that muscle burn, the good feeling muscle burn very quickly.
Yeah.
Like after a rep or two of this, you're like, oh wow, I'm feeling that, and the muscle is just popped from it.
And we have a little magic in that formula because, and again, if you want to go back to really understanding eccentric, which is the negative or the lowering phase of an exercise, it's way more important and more vital. In fact, some people would argue it's the only part that makes a difference to improving the muscle, is the eccentric. But the problem is, on the eccentric or the lowering phase, you're actually stronger than the lifting phase. So again, with a normal weight, you're never going to optimize any part of the lowering phase or the eccentric phase, which is the most important. But we have a little magic thing in the formula where we give you, so whatever you lift on the concentric, you get that same strength curve. So towards the bottom, for instance, of a squat where you're only doing 70, when it's 70, but we have this added 20%. So you're lifting and you're maximizing every inch, and then you're lowering and you're maximizing every inch because you get that overload on the eccentric.
And to your exact strength curve, so it's just perfect.
Exactly, yeah. So I would say every rep is the equivalent of, and this could even be an underestimate of at least 3, if not more reps.
Yeah, those all-out ones for sure.
Yeah. It really is remarkable, and it's very enjoyable. There's something, and we'll probably talk about this another time in depth, because this is really so next
engaging.
level. Yeah, it's very engaging, but that psychological component where you're in charge, because you can go easy, you can go medium, you can go hard. You can't pick a weight that's wrong from the point of view of, you can't accidentally pick a weight that's too heavy, because if you can't push it, well, it's not going to move. So you can only push as much as you can push. But then it means you can optimize every rep of every exercise. And
no time wasted changing weights or...
Exactly. Yeah. So it's pretty remarkable, and I can't wait to do some research on it, because I just know this mode is the most effective that I've ever
Yeah.
seen. And we've been doing eccentric overload. We've been doing all sorts of power training, all sorts of things, using the latest research and applying it with this technology.
Yeah.
But this is next level again.
Yeah, completely. And before, using the tablet is brilliant to, you know, set up different modes and stuff, but it's just kind of cumbersome and takes a little bit of the fun out of it. Can I say that?
Yeah,
Did a bit
100%,
on our
yeah.
side more so, right?
Yeah, it's definitely
Programming it
cumbersome.
all. And now it's just like, oh, just a dream. It's just like pick it up and go. There's no pick a weight or you'll always get it right.
Yeah, and that's another thing, because normally you're always balancing what's the most effective, but also what's the easiest and least cumbersome, and how do you reduce the complexity. And normally you trade one off the other, because if you want the most effective, it can be very cumbersome
Yeah.
to really try to figure out everything to make it the most effective. But here it's actually easier, more effective, and more fun. All three
Yeah.
in one. That's so unusual. Like,
Yeah.
You're always trying to, like, if it's more fun, then maybe it's not as effective, and you're always trading these things. Whereas now we've got all of those things optimized. It's definitely the most fun. It's the greatest experience. It's so easy. You just get up and go. There's a tiny learning curve, but very minimal compared to anything else. And then it's also like you're going to see better results than you've ever seen. And I would
Right.
invite anybody listening or watching this to even come in, just try it out.
Yeah, free challenge.
Welcome to come in for a free trial, and you will experience something like you've never experienced before.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty awesome.
And I'm just curious, have you still not lifted a weight since we've started working with this
No.
machine? Neither have I.
Not.
No.
In fact,
We haven't lifted any traditional
yeah.
weights.
And I
Not
just
on
did
purpose
I
even.
did-
I've
I
just
even
no
just did
interest.
I did my 3D body scan, and I put on 5 or 6 pounds of muscle in the last
Yeah.
10 days. And I've been obviously working out and stuff, but it's just, I don't know, I think it's just because it gets every inch of every rep, the muscles just are like, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
I can't go on about it so much, but so the resistance training, so you only need to do, as you say, less than an hour a week, 15, 20 minutes, maybe 3-4 times
You're
a
the
week.
same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably averaged a lot less than an hour. I'd say 40 minutes I've averaged over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Really.
If I'm honest, I should say 40 minutes.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, everyone thinks that
But our
because we
clients,
work
we
in a
don't want
gym
them to
or
think we're cutting them short, so we say an hour.
yeah, but it is kind of funny
Yeah.
because the average client that we have here probably works out more than we do.
They do, for sure.
Because
Yeah.
we are even more, like, we do more intense for even less. It's funny
Yeah.
because you think if you work here, oh, we must do hours every day. Most people just assume that, but obviously we don't. Because when you work here, you always get, like, you go to work out, but then, oh, I got to take this call. Like, oh, somebody's called in. I got to talk
Yeah.
to this client. So
like
you
you're
end up
not
getting
taking a break.
distracted, and, you almost have to book it in like everybody else
Yeah.
in order to get it in. So,
But
yeah.
I've been more motivated than ever, I have to say, like by a long shot, to use the machines and train. It's like exciting.
Yeah, there's
Whereas
something very
before it was like,
inviting
okay,
about
I'll
it.
do
yeah.
my workout. Whereas now it's like,
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Absolutely, yeah. There's something really enjoyable about it. There's something very invigorating. It's like, oh, I can't wait to do the next one. Like, even now, I could jump up and just do one now. It's like it's just so hard to articulate. I just think anyone, like, you just got to try it.
Yeah.
Got to try it. It is huge. And of course, I mean, we are saying, okay, what do you do at home? You could get one of these machines
Yeah.
and work it from home. And
I think it's a great investment. You're not going to regret it in the long run.
yeah,
You know?
Yeah. I mean, even with our remote clients, most of them now have these machines. I mean, for sure, you can still, of course, use anything. You can use body weights, you can use bands, you can use free weights. But this really is the future. And I think, especially if we can kind of couple it with this new mode,
Yeah.
for anybody, anywhere, it's just going to be next level.
Yeah, and we did see people, maybe of like the older generation, find the technology a little off-putting, having to use an app to use the machine. they'd still do it, but I feel like now it's really for everybody. Like a 100-year-old could come in and pick up the perfect weight for them. It's ideal.
Yeah, that's what I love about it, because like we were talking about earlier, like it's such a skill set to try to pick the right weight for everybody. And the problem is, even when you do, even if they're an expert and they're coming in all the time, like one day you're going to come in, you're just going to feel a little bit stronger. It could be what you ate, it could be whatever, the hormones, anything could be going on. But then the weight's already set, so you can't just suddenly increase it. Or conversely, you could have slept funny, didn't sleep well enough, maybe your shoulder's a bit weird or whatever. And again, you've already preset the weights, and then maybe they're too heavy.
You're going to overtrain them a little.
Yeah, it could lead to injuries or whatever. Whereas this is just beautiful, because we do a little lighter, then a bit more, then rest, and then go all out. So the muscles warmed up, and you're in control. So that's amazing, and you can just maximize it on every rep without having to worry about, is the weight set just perfectly for me right now in this moment, and on every part of that movement, not just for the weakest part.
And I'm surprised, I'm looking at, like the other day I had a larger class and everyone was going all out in the red zone and everyone's form was perfect. Usually when the weight's extra heavy, people, their hips are lifting in different ways, or they're just slightly compensating to the weight.
Brilliant point, which I should have thought of this before, but what you're saying there is, because throughout the range of motion, because again, normally you've got weak and strong points. So in order to we'll do all these weird, our bodies will do all these weird things to try to get a weight that might be too heavy in one part of the motion, but it's lighter in another part. Then you're going to do this weird stuff to try to use a bit of momentum or force it through, or use your back when you're supposed to be using your arms, and that's where injuries happen. But because this is completely even, so as you apply the weight, you're maximizing every inch. So why would you cheat? Why would you try to do some weird contortion? Because you're not going to get. The reason you do it, like I said, is because you have weak and strong points, number one, and number two,
it's too heavy in one part of the range.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second point I was going to say was, and when you have a weak point, you can use other muscles to try to kind of get leverage to push it up further, and that's not going to work for this at all. So because of that, then the chances of injury are going to be a lot less.
It's the reason people strain their backs often training, right? They're doing a slight kind of compensation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not with us.
Sorry, to articulate that better is, when you're using a free weight, you have what's called inertia. Yeah. So if you get a bit of momentum, obviously, with the weight in one place. I mean, the classic is if you see somebody doing Olympic lifting, like a clean and jerk, it's all technique, because they use inertia. So they'll quickly get the bar moving where they're strong, and then they duck in underneath and do, because, I mean, you can deadlift and squat way more than you can hold over your head, or to do like a shoulder press. So what they do is they use the momentum in the strong position, then quickly get underneath it and use that leverage. So that inertia is gone using this machine as well, and definitely in this mode. So no inertia, no weak and strong points, makes every movement really clean, and you're going to much better form without having to constantly be correcting people, because that's what's happening. They're doing what the brain is telling them to do, which is, like, you're always trying to be efficient and get to the end goal, but the problem is then you're going to sacrifice safety and form for that, and now that's gone. That's a really good point. Cool. Yeah, so the exercise, like you're saying, the big component to focus on is resistance training, but at the same time, and again, if people want more details, they can, that podcast we did on the definitive guide to exercise, how to optimize the aerobic zone, which is the better form of cardio that most people do wrong. Most people they're kind of fall into this middle area where they're not going slow enough, weirdly enough, to optimize the aerobic zone, which is the zone 2 or maffetone, and they're not going really fast enough to get the type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers effectively. They're they're not optimizing for either. So highly recommend people go back to that. But just as a simple rule of thumb, get in your steps, 7 to 10,000 steps a day. Maybe make your walks a little brisker to get more into that zone 2 maffetone to optimize that. Or if you really want to take it seriously, like I said, jump into that podcast and we kind of go into that in detail, exactly 180 minus your age, keep it below that for your heart rate and optimize that. And that will give you really good stamina. I love, we've got an elliptical machine there. And
great for energy.
Yeah. Great for energy and optimizing oxygen.
I really notice it when I add in a little extra.
Yeah. So that's cool. So then going into the third area of nutrition. So is there anything that you'd start off saying by nutrition? Obviously, what the best approach is, or what you think most people get wrong, or just someone that knows nothing about nutrition. So, okay, well, what do? Do I just cut back on my food intake, or is there something I should focus on, or should I be low carb or vegan or keto, or like what would you say?
There's a few things. Most people aren't eating enough protein, so just by increasing protein, you're going to help the body lose body fat, help gain muscle tissue. So that's a good first step, to look at the protein in the diet, the quality and the quantity, and then real food as well. A lot of people just start eating processed, nutrient void foods. So I think those two as a focus to start. Obviously you can get very detailed with keto or different low carb diets or low fat diets, but overall getting that protein up, that kind of, it's a bit of a cheat in a way, isn't it? Like a faster way to speed up those results.
Yeah, well, I love it because it's a positive focus. Because nearly anything else,
eat
like
more.
Low calorie means, I have to deprive myself. Low carb, I can't eat carbs, I'm depriving myself. Vegan means I can't eat any animal products, so I'm depriving myself. So everything else is what you're not doing and how you're going to deprive yourself.
True.
And it's always a negative focus.
Yeah.
What I love about this is we're focusing on the two things that you said, increasing your protein, quantity and quality, and increasing your nutrient density. So, and if you think of food as what you want to do is nourish, it's nourishing the body. So if you think of food as fuel, and if you want to have optimum health, you want to get into great shape, have great energy, great metabolic health, you really want to fuel the body with the optimum nutrients.
Totally.
So, focusing on that first is a really good switch. And it's something, and we've obviously worked with people over the years. We've focused in on low carb keto for a lot of people. For weight loss has worked very effectively for sure, but it's still a negative focus.
Intermittent fasting, but again, you just don't eat.
So again, you're okay, well, I can't eat for a period of time or whatever, but I just love that and I've noticed even with people that have struggled over the years, even with clients that we've had that just struggled with low carb or keto or any of the other kind of approaches, they seem to find this approach much easier because it's not something that they're not doing.
Yeah.
And another thing, even psychologically, we all have what's called counter will. I learned a lot about that with Zoe. So in developmental psychology, where whenever you're said, okay, you have to do this, there's part of you that's going to go, well, no, I'm not. Because you're like, well, you're not going to tell me what to do. So that counter will is in everybody. It's in all of us. It's a good thing. But then when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's like, whoa, if you tell me what not to do, I'm going to do that practically. So with this, it's here's something positive for you to do, to focus on, get in all those nutrients, fuel that muscle when you're doing that training, and you're going to get even better results. And even one of the clients, they said, well, since I've increased the protein intake, and they weren't trying to do anything else, they weren't trying to cut back on calories or anything, but they lost 3 pounds in a week. So,
wow.
Of course, again, if you want to go into super detail, our last podcast, we went into protein in detail because it's the most effective for weight loss because it's the most satiating, so it makes you feel fuller. So I keep quoting that research because it's so compelling. When people increase their protein from 15 to 30%, just in terms of the percentage. Without trying, without being asked to cut back or whatever, automatically they ended up consuming 441 less calories a day.
Wow.
And they lost 11 pounds in 12 weeks, which is pretty awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. So I think that's a brilliant approach. And of course, so can you talk maybe a little bit about how that interacts with the exercise? Because we've talked about these things in isolation, but does the nutrition affect the exercise? The exercise affect nutrition?
Yeah, in lots of ways. But a big one I see when people aren't eating enough protein but they're doing the exercise, I like to think of it as it's like you're trying to build a house and you get all the labour men in to do the work, but you didn't order bricks and cement to build your house, which is the protein. I feel like I made that up years ago, but you're not going to build a house, so you need to get those bricks and cement in, so the good quality proteins, building blocks.
I love that analogy. I'm going to use that one now.
Right? Yeah. I hope I made it up.
Well, sometimes we steal things unconsciously, right? But whoever, thank you.
Yeah.
Or if it was you, even great,
I
awesome.
Feel like
but I'm going to steal it now anyway. Go for it. So that's an awesome one. Yeah. So you do all this working out, but if you've no raw materials, you're not going to have much of a house at the end of it. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. And of course, the protein is made up of amino acids. They're like the bricks of the wall, which is cool. So you got to get the bricks in there and the cement.
And then obviously if you're eating a lot of sugar, that's really going to counteract the growth hormone that you're trying to release with working out. So getting the sugar down as well is huge. If someone's on a high sugar diet, it's going to be quite counterproductive. Yeah,
I always think like the first thing, because by default, so let's just say the average person, because most people don't consume much protein.
No, they don't.
And again, we went into detail, exact amounts and stuff in the previous podcast. So I'm not going to rehash all that. But I think most people are only consuming maybe 50 grams of protein a day.
Yeah, probably half at least of what they should, right?
Yeah, maybe 70, But really to get up to getting really good results, again, depends on the person and the goals and their weight, etc. But getting up to 140, 150 grams of protein a day.
Yeah, 0.75 grams to 1 gram per pound of body weight you want to be.
Exactly,
right,
yeah. That's for optimal results if you want to see a change. And just automatically by doing that, because you feel fuller on that protein, even without consciously cutting back, even on sugar or anything else, I think most people will find that they will start consuming less of the other
it's very
foods.
Noticeable. If you eat a high protein meal, you really can't eat anything afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're full for hours.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I think, wow, if everybody did that, they, knew where they were at, they could monitor what's working, what's not as they're going along. They start doing resistance training in whatever shape or form. Okay, we're going to be pushing these machines, but look, if you've got bands,
just
if you've got
weight.
free weights, do push-ups, do pull-ups, whatever it is that you can do, start with where you're at. If you want the best of the best and be part of the future, that you're going to see this kind of technology ubiquitous everywhere in probably 15 years from now.
Yeah.
But why wait?
Yeah.
And definitely you're welcome if anybody in the LA area come in and try it out. And you really experience that. And then, just supporting that with nutrient density and protein quality and quantity. Like I said, we went into a lot of detail of exactly the type of foods and how that all works. And then you've got all the pieces together. And I think without any of those, it makes it very hard for people to succeed. And that's why we've always insisted, no, you can't just, because people have said, can we just come in and do the exercise? And we've literally turned people away and said, no, you got to do the whole program, because if you're not on the right nutrition, if you can't see where you're going, because we pride ourselves
too.
Exactly. We want to see results all the time. We pride ourselves on the results that we get, and the average results have been phenomenal. So we don't want to see those our great track record drop.
And you need the right fuel to train properly as well, don't you? It's like
Yeah, because I'd almost feel like if somebody's on a really bad diet and they have huge inflammation in their body and they're taking a lot of processed oils and sugar and all this kind of stuff, and then they start working out with intense workouts, I don't know. To me, it's like you're just
can
gonna
trigger inflammation and stuff.
It's going to be too hard and too much inflammation. It's not going to be a pleasant experience at all. So
they're not going to enjoy the workouts because it's more painful when you have inflammation in your body.
Exactly. Yeah.
But any change, I always say, if the person's willing to make a change, like just increase your protein. That was always my go-to. If somebody was, just at the basic level of not quite wanting to change.
Yeah. And of course, there's always individualization. So that's where, they're the real principles that we operate on. And then if somebody, for whatever reason, it could be microbiome, they need help with their digestion and gut health. It could be hormonal. It could be all these other things. Psychological. Because the one thing, I guess, and you alluded to this in the very beginning, a huge component to this, and I think we should do a whole other podcast on it. But it's all based on the sort of the mindset and behavior change. But do you want to say
that's such an interesting topic,
or a little bit on that, and we can then maybe go into a whole podcast on it? Because I think that's the one where probably 90% of what we do is actually that.
I think definitely you see it. The people who get the best results, they see it in their mind nearly first, don't they? They have the vision locked in, and if they're not there, we help them kind of lock that vision in. And then the mind kind of follows. So if you've decided you're going to get in shape, but if somebody is coming in and they're focused on they've eaten the wrong thing and they're bloated and they're fat belly, like that doesn't get results. It seems like that kind of terminology and the negative talk, I think it's negative talk even people have towards themselves, that you need to make a switch. And
I think we could talk about that. Maybe next time we can go into detail of the different techniques that we would use,
getting motivated,
and things
isn't
that would be really helpful for people, that they can actually, because training the mind is the same as training the body. It's not this some weird obscure thing. And I think people are accepting that more and more. I remember 30 years ago, they just think you're some weirdo. Like even sports psychology. I remember working with a soccer team, that was 2005, and it was foreign to them, whereas now in sports, and you see it in all these new documentaries like on Netflix, the one on tennis and rugby, sports I like to watch, but there's great documentaries, and it's all about the psychology.
In the boxing world, it's massive, isn't it? I think Steve Collins had a huge influence in that, but
for sure. That's something we just,
I like Tony.
There was his new documentary just came out, which was awesome. I saw it last week.
I can't wait to see
St. Patrick's Day
it.
weekend. It is brilliant. But he was an incredible example of using the mind in the boxing.
He was not the best boxer, was he?
Well, he was totally up against it, because he was like pulled in last minute. He wasn't feeling great. He was totally off. And then he was middleweight, and this was super middleweight, so it was a whole other weight category, which is really hard. And that was awesome. So that's called One Night in Mill Street. So when it comes out, I highly recommend everyone to go watch that, and you can really see the psychology of that. So for sure. But we can dive into that in detail in another one. So I think that obviously is the only thing that we didn't miss, because having those three components. And then this other component, getting the mindset right, then you've got everything you need to succeed. And I think people will get phenomenal results. So for those of you that are at home or whatever, I think getting something like the Zozo Fit, if you have the money, definitely the Vitruvian, but if not, just use some weights or bands, but do some kind of resistance training, and then really, jump into the protein, watch the protein podcast, optimize that so you get the right quantity and quality, and the nutrient density as well, which is important. And then I think that's really going to stack the odds in your favor and get phenomenal results. So, is there anything else? Anything else that you want to say?
Don't think
Anything else
so.
we missed? I think we got pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it at that then for this week. And we'll definitely cover the psychology. And if there's any questions as well, if anybody, please like and subscribe. And do put in any questions, because we could do an AMA soon as well, because we do get a lot of questions.
That'd be fun.
And we might just throw in that as well. And we'll keep you up to date, latest cutting edge info on getting results, health, weight loss, etc. So
Yeah,
cool.
awesome.
Okay, so we'll see you again soon.